o'clock or a little bit after we're going to call this meeting to order. And we are here, or no, I'm just saying the fire exit, sorry. Two right there. We go out the hall, there's one straight, or you turn it up, there's another fire exit out that hall, and then 8 feet down the hall, you can take a right in case one is needed. We're at town clerk, please do the roll call.
Roebuck. Here. Now, there's Local, Jagger, Scott.
Here. Now we're going to open a public hearing to consider the amendment to the bond amount to pay for the cost of the Hamlin and Lakeshore Sewer District Number 1 and Town of Hamlin. Just to open things up a little bit, JP is going to talk real to our engineer, but we just went out to bids. The bids did come in a little bit higher than what we thought, which is everything is higher, you know, gas prices, everything else went way up. If you want to blame anything, I would blame COVID, that we didn't get things done sooner. I mean, COVID shut things down just when this was starting to roll. The state then, you know, was a little bit slow getting picked up through back to work because of the COVID. I mean, COVID was amazing thing. Yes, could this have been started sooner? Well, we didn't know COVID was. So, a lot of this, I mean, actually this, when I took office in January, we still didn't have all the necessary permission to DEC. I think it was the one we were crossing Sandy Creek is what we were waiting at for boring underneath Sandy Creek. So as of January, we still didn't have all this done. So we still have been waiting to do all of this. Like I said, we're not bad. Other towns around us we are the lowest town in this, like Kendall and Parma, even with the increase in the lowest rate of these towns around us for sewer. JP or I will give you the exact figures later on. I just want you to also know that the town of Hamlin, we saw that the rate went up when all the bids came in, we saw it. And one of our town board meetings, the town board agreed to pay $100,000 towards the price of it, so of the price of the increase. We didn't have to do it, we just did it because we wanted to, we thought that the town should maybe pick up some of the cost of this also. We didn't want to do all of it, but, you know, we did pick up $100,000, so it wouldn't be that much worse if we didn't get done that. But we decided it was the right thing to do. So, you want this? Sure.
Well, good evening, folks. My name is JP Shepp. I'm the town engineer for the town of Hamlin. With me is Emilio Moran, one of our engineers. I think over the couple of years we've designed, we've dealt with either me or Emilio going through this process. And we're here tonight to go over what's occurred and why there's an increase in the bond cost, and going into some details so everyone's on the same page. I hope you all have a handout. We had 100 of them over there, and it looks like we have a very good crowd. If you don't have one, you can share with someone you're with. I think there's a few spare, but we have these handouts, so please follow along. So, the first item on here is the project area that has not changed. The sewer district extends from basically where the Rockport water plant is, and we have the state park, all the way to the Parmatown line, and all the properties north of the park line. So those are the basic district boundaries. Nothing's changed there. In that area, there are 381 properties. Amongst those, there are exempt properties because they're owned by the state or the county or the town. There are properties that we expect that will merge because if we're gonna pay a debt service on a property and we're not using it, and we have two next to each other, we expect the mergers to occur. So what we did is we took that 381 parcels, and this goes back to the original district, and we expect those things, mergers and exemptions for exempt parcels. And so we should carry a figure of 313 equivalent dwelling units. And equivalent dwelling units means if you have a single family home on one parcel, you're one equivalent dwelling unit, EDU. And there's approximately 721 people in that district. So, just to give you a little background, we've been looking at this district for many years. I've been a town engineer since around 1994. We've looked at many permutations of this district, including near state parks at Hamlin Beach, excluding them. It originally started with just West Waxahachie Beach, and kept growing and shrinking depending on what Parks was going to do. In any event, I've been looking at it many times over the years. When the READY program came out, because of the flooding that occurred in 2017 and 2019, the state finally came forward and offered up a grant program. They initially offered up 90% towards projects that would benefit the lakefront, make the lakefront more resilient and capable of handling flooding and protecting the environment, etc. The towns and counties along Lake Ontario argued with the state and bumped that from 90% to 95%. So in 2019, when the program was being announced, the former town supervisor, Eric Peters, asked us to dust off the report we had done previously, update the cost, and we came up with a new report. And that project cost in the new report was a $7.9 million project to cover the area I just discussed, from the Rockport water plant to the Hamlin line. The grant was received. It offers 95% of the project cost. So there's a grant being offered for $7.5 million project. Which meant the local share, which you folks in the sewer district, would have to pay for that local share, that remaining 5%, which amounted to $395,000 on a $7.9 million project. Based upon our estimate, we know there's 381 parcels, and we're conservative and excluding a certain amount that we divide up that debt service of the $395,000. What was originally proposed was getting a loan for 4.25% over 30 years to pay for that debt service of $395,000. That meant that each of the equivalent dwelling units, normally in single family home, was going to pay $75.21 per year. So that was in 2019, 2020, and I wouldn't need to reiterate everything that's happened since then, but it's taken a long time to get to where we are, given all the getting state approvals and working with state agencies and separate buildings. We finally got approval to bid the project in May. And so we let it out for bid, and we opened up the bids for the work on the 7th of July. And after bids came in, the $7.9 million project became an $8.25 million project. So the budget increase was $350,000, a total of only 4.2% on our estimates from several years ago. So the new local share that you folks in the district have to pay for is $645,000. Now, other things that we have the project cost increases, but the interest rates have increased. And as noted above, we assumed 4.25%, which was conservative at the time. A couple of years ago, we were getting on the order of 3% for long-term municipal bonds. Today, it's above that. We're using a figure of 6%, which is higher than what it presently is, but no one can predict where these interest rates are going to go. In any event, using 6% and our increase in cost, we're looking at what was going to be $75 per equivalent dwelling unit per year is now up to about $147 per household per year for the debt service. The other costs, such as operation of the system, electrical costs, the grinder pumps for each household, the costs of non-county pure waters are charging have been pretty much flat, so those have not changed. So the net increase of what we're estimating now, in the original formation of the district, we had an estimate of about $231 per year, including debt service and operation and maintenance of the sewer system, and we're now up to about $303. So that's the crux of where we are now. The town, the district has to borrow more money because you are the folks paying for it. It's your decision whether to move forward or not. It's part of the district's requirements that if there's an increase in project cost or an increase in annual cost, that you have an opportunity to decide if you want to go forward or put the brakes on the project and stop it. That's why we're here tonight, just to explain the increase in cost. Otherwise, things have not changed right now. The low bidders that we got, because of this process we have to go through this evening, and if we move forward, it's adding time on, and we can't just award the contract. Both of our contractors that we low bids have agreed to hold their bids for up to around October 4th, to delay awarding the bid, so we can go through this process. And they agreed to that, and so we're here tonight, so you folks can decide, when you look at this additional cost, or is this a time to put the brakes on and say, you want to stop this process? So this is going to be repetitious, but there has been unanticipated inflation, as we all know, on everything, whether you're buying tires or we have the COVID, the delays, and the hikes in interest rates. So those are the factors of why we're here today. I can tell you, as Supervisor Bob suggested, we're in better shape here than we are on many projects I work on all over Western New York. So this is where we are, and this is for you folks to voice your concerns, and so we can inform you of where we are.
voice some concerns, I am not about it. JP right now is figuring on, at the time right now, with the old thing, we're paying for the 381 parcels, that's what we're splitting the bond issue up. That's what everybody's tax roll showed last year was 381. That's what town board voted on. We might vote on that again. That would take your money down to every parcel, that would be one parcel. We are trying to stay consistent because our last two water lines we have done in town have been one parcel, or one, the same thing for every parcel out of it. So the town is trying to stay consistent with that. So at 381 parcel, it's the actual debt service of $121.01 a year. Just to give you more information, we can talk about all this later on. So just between the two, then 147, so it's around $26 less a year. But every parcel then, even the vacant parcels get charged $121. Also saying that, we have talked to our attorney with the town board on zoning meetings. And we are talking about, and it looks like it might go through, I don't know if you have anything to do that, but because sewers are going on the lakefront, now you don't have to worry about setbacks for the sewers, for each of them anymore. The town right now has a 1,100 foot and 1,200 square foot minimum for a house. We are saying for the lakefront zone, this would be zoned just for the lakefront and senior citizen development. We would allow a 900 square foot home, so maybe a 30 by 30. Not on, don't call it a tiny home, it's just a smaller home, not on wheels, if you have a foundation, with concrete or pillars like some of the cottages are already. So some of your property, now that the sewers come in, may turn into building lots. We would have to talk, and see exactly all that, but I think a lot of the property may turn into a building lot with the sewers and the smaller homes that we get on there. So that is something we've been talking about for the sewers coming through. I think it's gonna pass, we have not passed it yet because the sewers already passed, so. With that, I'm gonna definitely JP, but I just wanted you to all know that there is a 381 option too, and that's $107.01. So that would knock your figures down by $26.
I'd suggest maybe the easiest thing for questions and answers so people can hear things. Come up to the microphone and so everyone can hear you. The clerk suggested, please state your name and address.
Good evening, Mark Russell, 7048 Benedict Beach, resident and homeowner. I'd like clarification on one of the numbers that you passed out in your information today, specifically related to the annual debt service. Under your project summary, first section, project origin, last bullet says debt service was estimated at 7521 prior to this increase. Make sure I understand that number correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When we have an informational meeting like this, our first chance to hear anything about sewer, I agree that was the number that was shared with us, but subsequent to that meeting, not only was there a legal notice put in the West Side News as required to form a sewer district, there was also that occurred on the 23rd of July 2020. There was a follow-up letter sent, I assume, to everyone who would be in the district, like myself. It was notice of public hearing on 5th of August 2020, and that letter was dated by the town of Hamlin, the 23rd of July 2020. In both those documents, the town letter and the notice posted in the West Side News, it was stated that the annual cost for homeowners, this is the total number, was $210.46. And in one of the documents, it explained the breakdown of that $210.46. And I'll skip the other numbers. The annual debt service cost for EDU in that letter was $54.62. So my documents say that was the expected cost for that service until this change versus the 7521, which was mentioned before things became legal documents. So I don't think the 75 number is right to say that was the old number. So if you could clarify that difference, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, so again, I think Supervisor Bowden was touching on this. There's been some back and forth between the per parcel or developing an equivalent dwelling unit chart to account for exempt parcels, county parcels, state parcels, town parcels, etc. And an expectation that of the 381 parcels in the district, we expect some will merge if we're going to have to pay debt service for a vacant parcel. So you're correct, there's been some discrepancy. The lower number, whatever was published and legally, and I apologize, I prepared both these documents, and these certain documents that were prepared were based on per parcel, and others were being more conservative, expecting some consolidation of parcels and merging of parcels like that. So that's the difference. So whatever was legally published, the lower number that you're citing, and that, so you're correct then, it should be 210. Correct. So it should be from the 210 to the proposed 231. Okay, thank you.
My name is Marty Carpenter. I live on Root Road, Ontario Beach. I have a couple questions. You mentioned about the parcels. If merging, I have now 3, and I'm going to get, I believe, on each one of those parcels. By merge, will it be under 1? It will not, will that, how do you say it? Will it be the same price as just 1, even though I've merged 3?
Right, if you combine 3 parcels into 1 parcel,
It will be the same price as 1 parcel, even though, all right.
correct, that's why early on we were trying to be conservative, knowing that there was 381 parcels. We know these things are going to happen. On the other hand, we know also that some folks are going to sell off parcels and divide parcels. It happens.
Okay, I have another question. It's an idea. How far it goes. Being election year, I know I came and I heard Harrington got a grant, $1 million grant for a skate park, a pile of cement board and things. Is it possible, and I know it's increased, we have a 95, their grant covered 95% of it, but our costs went up. So that cost should also go up. Is it impossible going back to them and saying, we need a grant of $300,000, $500,000. In election year, they like handing out money. And that, well, they do. And I mean, if you got a skate park going for $1 million, I'm like, whoa. And they kind of go to the east side project going on, we're on the verge of it. Bryce, she knows all about the COVID stuff.
We can try. We can try. But one, I can just let you know, I'm not going to try to get the hopes up. One town around us already tried it and got turned down. I just let you know, man, but we can try. We can make a phone call and try. Maybe we won't get turned down. I'm not going to slam the door in your face. Also, if you live on Tiny or another person from Montreal, just call them. You cover that driveway or right-of-way or roadway.
It's down the road.
It's a special thing.
I understand.
Because of this right away, so you gotta go see our assessor. To put it together now, you gotta have you gotta hire an engineer, because you live on fuel natural years ago, back in the 1800s, on fuel was made a subdivision. So now you gotta undo the subdivision, so you have to go see an engineer, surveyor, thank you.
Right.
And they have,
That's not very possible.
yeah, they have to put that, they have to take it out of that subdivision and make it your own. I'm just letting you know, it can be done. It can be done and everything else, it's just that because of that being a right of way through, you'll, the next jump to the next one.
So I can see where it's north of the parkway, and those parcels are north of the parkway, but no dwellings go back there, so the sewers aren't going to impact those parcels at all, because it's gonna go down the middle, down that beach road. So I don't know if it's not gonna change anything.
Right. It's not going to go down. The sewer line will probably go down Israel, I believe, if I look at the map.
But I think
It'll come all the way down, that road will come down your house.
So I saw it went down Beach Road, right behind the houses. That's what I last saw, was a map.
It could, maybe an island might be different, I don't know how they're gonna get the map.
Okay, I don't know how to
Steve, can I,
Go ahead.
Can I just explain what you're talking about, because I was on the call? So, the Antio specific in the double parcels, back in 1902, were subdivided. Because New York State requires a resub on subdivision, none of those parcels can be courtesy merged by the town. Otherwise, it would be an easy merge. And so when the town looks at the quantity of EDUs, they're looking at a lot of people, I think you know the quantity, who have two parcels that appear to be one, there's only one dwelling, but will be double charged for, which is pretty unfortunate, right? I'm one of the people who accidentally haven't merged before this, and so I'm speaking to the people who don't have that, but I don't think it's fair. I just don't think it's fair to two parcels that look like one, that will never be likely developed away from the lakefront. And now is the time to consider it. I think in certain districts of sewer and water districts where this consideration is there and someone knows they're not going to develop it, or besides, there's no further development, you opt out, you pay one, and you probably have no chance to add it later. Or you value the property and you subdivide it for the future, maybe of a property that's going to sell or build, and you pay the two. But I think that should be an owner's choice, not a mandate, because each property is different. So I did do the research, there is no other way to do it. I looked at the assessor for the past 2 days. The cost of our typical surveyor this morning was minimum to do a tax map for the county, $3,000. Minimum. And then up from there, depending on if there's any improvements and the adaptations and the changes. So it's economically a challenge, which you want to pay. And so I don't know who else is in that situation, but I know there's a considerable number of them, and I think that's what's changing your question about the difference from before, a high and lower number. It's definitely something that's going to swing this, but I think everybody needs to think about the whole group that's involved here, and make it fair. So I just want to speak on that. I got some other questions, but I'll leave that one tomorrow. Yeah, sorry. Cheryl Kisicki, 7890 Newport Drive.
All right, thank you. Also, just for clarification too, if you are charged, if it does go and we're charged full ED on every vacant parcel, it is just the debt service that you pay, because there is not going to be any cost, no sewage in it, so it's just that $121 if we pay nothing else on the vacant parcel. All right.
Hi, Tanya and Sunquist, 7546 Sandy Harbor. So my question is timeline. If we're going to, we may not hear about who's accepted the bid until October 4th, After that, what are we looking at as far as the project timeline, when ground is broken, when it might end, when I might be flushing to the beach?
So if we can award the contract, you folks agree to the price increase. If we can award the contract on October 4th, it'll take roughly a month to put the contract together and get the contractor's bonds and insurance and all those things. We would issue what's called a notice to proceed to the contractor to start work within about a month, so sometime in November work could begin. The contract, we've included 380 days to complete the work. So it would be, end of next year, everything would be operational. Now, there would likely be portions that will be operational before that, but in the contract, we allow a little over a year to get everything up and running.
Kind of sub-question in there is that even though we've had a couple of good years as far as the level of the lake goes, I know that we are not here in control of that, but that's in someone else's hands. Is there a provision in the event of flooding and that things need to stop, that 300 and whatever days can be extended, or can you get where I'm going?
The municipal contracts allow for unforeseen conditions. So, of course, none of us can predict that, and it would be fair for a contractor to hold to a timeline if he's physically working on the water or anything. Yeah, there are provisions that allow for extending contract times beyond the contractor's delay.
I figured there was, I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, appreciate it. So we're looking at the end of the project, and the project theoretically would start in maybe January, February, March, somewhere in there.
Well, we would award the contract in October as soon as we can, and then the clock for the contractor starts ticking.
Starts in, and it's awarded.
Yeah, so it would be, fall of next year would be when the theoretical completion, barring any unforeseen conditions.
I understand it's theoretical,
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
That's the contract date, 380.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, it's Cheryl again. Few more questions. Back to the parcels, if there is parcels that get subdivided later, is there an option to add a drop? And how would that happen, say, a year, 5 year, or during the period?
Okay, so there are many people making properties that said, oh, I'm going to build on this property, and I want to pump, and I want to tie it. That's fine, but that means all of you folks are paying for an improvement if someone that doesn't actually have an improved property. So the policy that we're basically putting forth is if construction is undergoing and an approved building permit is issued, we'll make sure that property gets a pump and is able to connect to it. Once the contractors leave and we're trying to wrap up project costs, we're going to cut it off at that point. What happens in 2 years? It'll mean you're going to have to come and get a site plan approval and building permits, and there will be a higher fee for a connection. Because we didn't factor in pumps and piping for vacant properties. We factored in pumps and piping for existing properties. So there will be a higher fee to pay for installation of pump in the lateral line and tying it into the main line that everyone else is connected. So we're not doing anything on spec. We're going to serve the houses that are there or are very close to the building permit.
Okay, so the full cost would be incurred after the period in which the project is done, and there would be no reduction in the overall district cost per person, say 10 more pumps are added.
Oh, there would, so, when I describe the figure we're using in presenting is the 313 equivalent dwelling units. If we add on to those, and this is happening in Hamlin, there's 15 lots proposed now after we got the district form and they had to start putting pipe in. That's gonna turn that 313, if there's 10 here, it'll be 323. And that gets divided, that service gets divided amongst everyone.
Okay.
And even if it happens in 5 years, they get added on when they join on, and then that number comes down as development occurs.
Okay, so that number could change, fluctuate throughout the.
A very, very typical water district, sewer district, as people come on, they have to pay for, you're not paying for them, they're joining in to pay that 30 years debt.
Okay, and so the only option right now would, and I hate to repeat it, a vacant lot, 2 lots for the same dwelling, is right now, they will be paying just the fee, not the CDU. Can you just give the example of what one person will be paying if they have a dwelling and then a vacant lot adjacent?
Well, personally, if I was in a case amount, I would merge. So I wouldn't have that extra debt service of 121. So if we merge them, that's going to be 121. If you don't, there's going to be maybe 121, we're not going to pay for the other ancillary operation cost.
Unless you are sick.
Unless you connect up and have a dwelling.
And there's no discretion left in the town or the town board or discipline?
Well, I think there is, we have to present something. So what we're presenting to you folks to make a decision, just like we did 2 years ago, assume figures and things are always in flux. The number of parcels change, we merge and subdivide, and numbers are always. But this is a figure we're presenting. I think it's got some conservative numbers built into it without being crazy conservative or crazy, lower than the level we're at.
I would propose one thing to the board, and that would be if there is a large enough number, and I don't know how many there are, that they consider, with each of those individuals, if they do want to merge, that's a choice each one of those has, that you work with a local surveying company to get a roof rate while this is going on as a one-time deal. I think that is something that they would offer up, and I think it's just, if there's no other option, but to charge for each one and nobody has any discretion, I'm sure there's some local companies that would work with us to do that. So I make that suggestion to the board.
We can take that under our, Kurt is taking all this down, we can take it under suggestion. We can talk to a couple people, again, not guaranteeing anything, but we can definitely talk to people. And again, also, this rate increase, we went from 4.25% to 6%. The interest rates can move, I don't know what the Feds are gonna do, so that can change based off of it, and also the interest rate spikes, or if all of a sudden, I don't foresee it, the interest rates drop that down to 4.25.
Okay.
Because the money, that can change your amount of money also.
So that, the interest rate is the second piece, and that is a huge factor, right, because it's a 30-year. One of the things the state does offer, is not a grant, but a relief on that percentage of interest for disaster recovery. It's not the same grants that you looked at before. These are new ones, and they're for infrastructure. And I would just ask that you look into those also, so that if there's relief for the percent interest, that we could get that to.
Okay, no, we'll look into that. And so she's taking notes down, we'll look into it.
I propose you get her on the board, she's got some great ideas. I'm Wayne Neely, 7924 Newco Drive. You said October 4th would be the award date, is that right?
Yes.
So if I were to take till October 4th to award the contract and get somebody locked in, it sounds like, I mean, that's 3 months.
Because we have to do a permit, what's called a permissive referendum, and that's a 30-day, we have to post, we have to vote tonight. We're gonna have a special board meeting to say that, okay, we're gonna go for this. Then we gotta post it in the paper, give it 10 days notice, and the permissive referendum. And then after that, we have to have another meeting, once the permissive referendum passes or whatever, and if we stop or whatever, we stop or it's like, so people can go in, that's another 20 days, that's a legal thing where people can legally challenge everything. Your SWIFT or whatever, permit or whatever.
Well, I just know that the delays don't help us.
So basically, these are protections for you folks. We're presenting this information to you folks today, and you have time to consider it and time to, if you want to fight this or vote against it, these are the opportunities. That's why there's 60 days until there is a green light. And if there's enough opposition, then you folks can put the brakes on it. That's why there's this time.
Ken Schleck, 7138 Tucker Lane. Will the town do anything about getting a cadre of potential contractors to run our electrical lines where they have to be run, and sewer lines that have to hook up to the grinder pumps? Because some plumbers and stuff can charge an arm and a leg, and it doesn't seem like it ought to be that expensive.
So what we've found in water districts and in similar sewer districts is the electrical contractors and the plumbers are going to be knocking on your doors because they're going to know there's 300 some odd properties that need plumbing connections made and electric connections made, and I would work with your neighbors. You know, the town can't make recommendations of contractors for private work, but they will come to you. Believe me, the contractors that are on the site are going to have laborers and workers that are going to be more than happy to do weekends and nights and do site work. So they'll come to you. It's like, I've seen it a million times, and work with your neighbors.
Do the contractors have to have town approval?
No.
And you know why not do it?
Well, I expect there are some talented people out here who have no problem making a sewer connection, making the connection from there, where it goes in their septic and goes into this new tank. So,
Okay. No,
I mean, the issue is, there's a break point where the town has to say, this is your private part, this is the part we're going to take care of. Okay?
And yeah, with what you're saying, like water lines and stuff, if you get the contract, exactly what you're saying, contract, they get like 5 houses in a row, if it's the work for you, I've always seen the price drop. If they don't get to pick up and move their equipment, their price will probably drop per household.
in terms of timeline, my assumption is that when the contract is let, the contractor will have to come through and put stakes in and figure out exactly where the line is going and stuff like that. So that's going to take a certain period of time, right? And each homeowner is going to have some kind of feedback as to where the grinder pump's going, right? Any idea how long that process will take before actual construction?
Well, you may remember, or a letter was sent to every property owner that we requested you to indicate the location of your septic tank, where things are, any instructions, and a preferred location of where you would like your grinder pump. So, you know how many responses did we get? Maybe 75% have responded. On other similar projects, we've done it by letter, we often do a second letter. When things are getting tight, the contractors nearby, there's knocking on doors. It gets to the point where we put a stake on the front stupid and say, put a stake where you want your pump so we can move along and get this work done. So it'll be several efforts, but if I can remind you, and this isn't hard to remember, but, we set up an email that's hamlin.sewer@mrbgroup.com, that's our company. Any questions you have, if you have information on where you want things, let us know. We've been logging this thing for 2 years now, and dealing with individuals on individual issues. But hamlin.sewer@mrbgroup.com. Send us your questions, your concerns, and we'll try to address the engineering part of it. If you don't like your neighbor's pipe of their lawn, I can't help you with it.
Then you forget that thing on conference we have on our website, so that they're be otherwise. We're going to tell us that we'll be able to get
Just one other comment. We're never going to get a deal like this again. I mean, we're getting essentially 95% of the cost covered by the state of New York. It's never going to get better than this. The other thing is, septic tanks only last 25, 30, 35 years. I had to replace ours, total new leach field, total new septic tank in the last 10 years. It's not cheap. I'm still in favor of this. My septic tank may well go for another 20 years, but the value of sewers is a lot.
To go along with that, Dave, I'll get you in a second.
Come on, now, really? Ridiculous.
We just got from Donovan, who is our bond company, they just gave me a readout today. If this gets turned down now, and in the future, if the state says, you will do this for Clean Water Act or whatever, if they come and say, everybody will do sewers, and this is gone, and you have to front the bill for this bond per year, without any grants from the state, is $1,800 a year.
I was kind of on the same boat as him. Dave Moore, 7544 St. Garbage Drive. Kind of on the same boat as him. You know, there isn't a person in here, I think, that can say, I don't want to do it. But on the other hand, it's been 2 years. The last notice I got came to my mom and dad's house, who we sold 2 years ago. So I don't know where you guys get your information, but I get my tax bill every year. Every single year I get my tax bill. And all my information for this part of the project has gone awry. So, you know, maybe part of MRB's deal is maybe pay attention to what they do, pay attention to how they do their stuff. You know where I live, you know, and we have multiple people on our beach, and all you gotta do is walk in the house and say, here it is, because hardly anybody on our beach lives now. So you just gotta, just go to wherever, and I don't know, this guy that owns 3 properties, I think he was one of the others that didn't get his stuff. So that's my opinion. So I think doubling the price basically is still a good deal. And so long as everything gets done without another hiccup. Because this is a hiccup. So that's my only opinion.
All right, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Mark Russell, Benedict Beach again. I would like to comment, it is nice that since 2022 got here, we saw the activity pick up and things start happening, as alluded after 2 years of not much. Hope it doesn't stop engineering and design, I'm sorry, so that's a tough one to take as a reason. I have 2 concerns about the project. One of them was just mentioned, February 1st, 2021, letter from the town to residents of the sewer district. I'll skip all the other words. The last sentence in one section says, the location of which will be selected and approved by you, the location of your grinder pump unit. To me, that's very important. That's going to take, somebody has to actually come out of property and talk to us. And I took the liberty of purchasing a software set of the bid prints, and as an engineer, I'm very familiar with reading them. And certainly it raised a lot of concerns in my mind about the locations on those prints. One that I don't think will work if someone ever comes and talks to us. Per your letter, residents get final approval. I want to make sure that step doesn't get skipped over. That's concern one. Concern two, just as important, at the time we filled out the easements, and that's what this letter was about, please do the easements, here are the rules and requirements. The documents provided had the property lines on the property shown incorrectly. I, in writing, notified MRB and the town of Hamlin as well, saying they're wrong, could really make some bad decisions on picking where you put the pump units, because you may say, has to go here, really it's on the neighbor's property for the house that's indicated. As near as I can see on the prints that went out to bid, the property line was still wrong. To be fair, the property lines came from the County of Monroe records, and if you go on the County of Monroe website and look at these records, you'll see that the property lines are wrong. Unless some of you, your property line goes straight through the center of your garage or through your family room, then they're all good. But if they're actually between your house and the neighbor's house, they're wrong. My concern is, my next door neighbor has the unit on the wrong side of his house where it can't possibly go and connect to the sewer, but it's logical based on the property lines as shown, the incorrect property line. So that's a second concern I have as we go forward.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with anything you said. We did work with the county mapping. We did not survey 381 parcels and do property surveys for each person. We did send letters, and I apologize, folks. We know people move, we know people have different mailing addresses than their living addresses. So we've struggled, we've reached out, I think, as best we can and multiple times for people that have not responded. I believe the supervisor and the attorney have knocked on doors to try and get a hold of folks. But we did send letters out saying, if you look at this map, please, if there's a concern with it, let us know, and we're going to correct it. We want to do that. We don't want to do anything that's going to be putting anything in jeopardy or causing an encroachment or anything in the future. So we need your input. I mean, we've asked for it, letters were sent, and we've gotten responses from many, and many that have not. So we're trying. It's a monumental task with this number of properties. Regarding delays in the project, we've worked ahead as far as we can. I don't mean to blame COVID or whatever, but getting approvals from state agencies when we're not working or working from home and all these issues, we struggled for a long time getting approvals and comments and things from state and federal agencies to get this thing through. I don't mean to make an excuse. I'm sorry, but things slowed down terribly since the beginning of 2020, and I apologize for that. No one would be happier if this was already under construction and we didn't have to talk about this and deal with it. I'm not happy being here either.
Alex Rasbach, West Homer Beach Road. I have a question. Assuming this goes forward, I understand what the scope is. Have you got an idea of where this will start and stop, or is it starting at one end and work its way through to the other end, or multiple places, or how does that work?
That's a good question. So we structured we broke this into two contracts. So the basic structure is everything has to get pumped up to the Monroe County trunk line. The nearest location, the most logical location for this is on Walker Lake, Ontario Road, up by the little cemetery, So we broke that into a contract to build a pump station by North Hamlin Road and a pump station there to go up to the trunk sewer. That has a much shorter completion date, and so we can't do anything if we can't get it up to the trunk sewer. So that's contract one. That has to be done before anything else. So the logical way this will pan out is they're gonna work their way out from Walker Lake and Ontario Road, east and west, and we're gonna leave some of this to the contractors' discretion. But it'll probably start at the hub of the Parkway and Walker Lake, Ontario Road, and progress east and west.
All right, the second question I had is, if this progresses through the winter, which it sounds like the timeline says it will, I'm sure there's people in there besides myself that don't spend the winter here. Does the homeowner have to be home when this construction happens?
No, but I mean, we're certainly gonna be it would be nice to be in contact with you. And if there are issues like that, again, if we move forward, we're gonna try and get scheduled together and let a newsletter out, and we'll try and get a handle on when things are gonna happen. But again, we have the website or the email address. We want your concerns, we wanna know these things. You know, we've had folks that said, you know, I'm having a graduation party or my daughter's getting married. We don't want to hear it in July. Well, it's gonna be, we're not gonna be here or we don't want to.
Well, I understand that, I'm just, if electrical work needs to be done and interior or plumbing work needs to be done, somebody's got to get in the house. Right. And there's nobody there.
We just have to see where the schedules work out.
All right.
Is there a place where the homeowners can come and look at the drawings that you have, that you've given the contractor, to saying, okay, the main line's going here, this is where it's going to this house. Before the contractor gets there, starts putting stakes out, and then the homeowners out there argue with the contractor, and I work with contractors every day, so I don't want to be arguing with them, okay? I want to know up front. I want to look at that drawing and say, yeah, that's where it's going, going right down there. I'm okay with that.
I don't have a map that's saying, I don't believe this map has where the sewer pumps are, does it? This does? This one right here? Okay, we do have a copy of this at the town hall. If you go see the town clerk, there, we have a copy of this great big map there that you can stop in and look at the map.
It will show the main line, it will show all where we're going to come down with the outlet, right?
That's correct. And by all means, we want you to come and look at them or dig out what we've sent you on if there's any instructions or what location you prefer, let us know. You know, the maps in front of you reflect things that folks have told us. A lot of folks haven't told us stuff. So by all means, between now and when things get rolling, should they happen to get rolling, we're going to reach out again and ask folks to mark up their drawing at the town hall or return that to us.
Why can't you put it online?
I'd like to take a picture of it. I'd like to come there and take a picture of it. Okay?
Why can't you put it online?
Yeah, I was down to the town hall, this is my property right here, and on the print.
That's the town hall. But I still go to that town. I don't have one. And I suggest everybody to do that.
The problem with putting it online, folks, if the document is bigger than anyone's email can hold, it's a gigantic document. So it's not something, it would bog down the entire town Hamlin's data and website. But I think if we get to October 4th and we're awarding things, it would certainly not be a big deal to resend. Check on the new addresses to Dave Moore's point, see what's changed, send out a new set of drawings, for folks that we haven't communicated with and get input, but it's gonna be a continuous process. We know there's snowbirds, we know there's people that are there seasonally or the weekend. So it's a tough process. We've done it before at Fort May and Line Silver today and very similar locations. And we're prepared to work with people.
Larry Foster, West Potomac Beach Drive. During the discussion of the placement of the grinder pumps, a question popped in my mind that I had not thought about before. In our area, the distance from the lake to the front of the house varies significantly. One neighbor may be way close to the lake, another neighbor back further. I think there have been variances over time in grandfathering. Theoretically, I could end up with a grinder pump beneath my kitchen windows on my neighbor's property or my bedroom window. I've been in areas with grinder pumps before. I'm hoping they're better. They're not particularly quiet, particularly when you're trying to sleep. It seems very loud. And there's an odor oftentimes that comes with them. If my neighbor has the final say, and I'm not suggesting that they would do this, as to where that goes, most convenient for them would be furthest away from their property and as close as possible to mine. My question is, are there setbacks that prevent that from happening?
It's got to follow typical setbacks for normal structure. So on the lakefront, normally in Hamlin, there's a minimum of 8 feet, I believe.
So they would have to be 8 feet is the size, correct, I understand. That's the current setback. So they would have to have that pump 8 feet away from the neighbor's adjoining lot.
From the property line.
We'll put it in the middle of their front yard, which isn't probably going to be very pleasant either. But, so I guess the next obvious question is there a recourse for either party? In other words, an easement on that setback, some mediation, some agreement, or is it everybody stands on their own and fights for themselves?
Folks have property rights. If they meet their property rights, they place the pump where they choose. Remember, this is an underground pump. I don't know. I've dealt with these many times. The noise of a 2 horsepower pump that's 6.5 feet below the ground, submerged, is not a significant issue. But people have property rights, and they can put it on their property where they choose.
Regardless of the impact on the neighbor.
People can put a shed on their property where they choose as long as it meets the setbacks.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Linda Baker, Newcomb Drive. As far as that second parcel thing, why is it when you put the water line through, you didn't charge the same for the water line going through my back lot? As you're doing with the silver. You only did like $20. So why is that? And I'm not marking it for $20.
Okay, so the water districts, the debt service on those was nothing near $75.
But see, on the back lot, you can't put a building on that structure.
Understood.
Written that way, so why would you charge me for a pump on it? Yeah.
But the water districts weren't charged a per parcel basis because we were looking at debt services of $500, $600 per year. When we get a 95% grant, it was decided not by me, but by decision of the town supervisor and the board that this is a bargain, $75 per parcel, now I guess it's higher than that.
Twice.
It is not a burden when it's getting to be compared to a water district where it's $600 per year. So that was a decision made, and I think the board is hearing there's concern about it, and I think the board will be considering that.
And when you're running it on that part of, we're on it. Okay, so where are you running it? Are you running it on Newco or are you running it on Onslow?
We have the drawings here, well, I'd have to look at them, but I don't think we can go through individual cases in this venue, but by all means, we're happy to go through.
Tomorrow we can see where it went. We're also trying to do consistency here instead of jumping back and forth. And all of a sudden you got people screaming, why did you do what you're saying? Why did you do that EDU and that in the full EDU? The last two water lines you didn't do in the full EDU because the price was up there so high, because the material rate jumped up so high, that if you didn't have to use vacant properties, the people wouldn't get water line, it would be above the state threshold. And then that would knock the water line out and they wouldn't get any water line. So we had to do the full EDUs so that people could still get their water. That wouldn't be the case here, but we're trying to stay consistent. Now, the next water line that goes, I guarantee you the price is going to be up there. We're going to have to do full EDUs again probably, just so that the water line will go through. What a right in terms of what we so that people didn't get it and everything. So that's why we're trying to also stay consistent.
And as far as like the placement, like he was walking, like he got it on my back porch, so that doesn't work. Can I change that? Can I come down and move it? I don't want to look at as much as
No, I mean the pumps can be changed up until the day they get the trench and everything.
Taylor Storyers, I'd just like to point out that when the sewer district was first put out there, and the document is on the town of Hamlin website, it was proposed to everyone, and that's what we all agreed on, that the parcels that were improved would be X dollars, and the unimproved would be half the cost. So for me, I find it offensive that that has changed, and it was never a vote by us. And just stating that, and I know there's people on the road with like 10 parcels. Not everyone wants to merge their properties. I mean, we're potentially voting on something where you may change the rules. So why would someone merge properties when you may make something buildable? Okay, so that's the other is, let's just say you put in all these grinders. What is the timeline someone has to connect?
I'm pretty sure that
I guess, first things first. To present something that you folks consider, we have to assume a number of units that are going to contribute. As I said, there's 381 parcels. We're considering dividing it amongst 313. That's a figure we're using. That's what's being published. And that's the figure in front of you is the figure we're proposing, and it's your choice on that figure. If you own 10 lots, that's your choice whether to merge them or not merge them.
Right, but I'm saying that when it was originally proposed, data was put out there of how it was going to be charged, and then the town, they just decided to make everything an EDU. Okay, well, we've had things change, budgets change, and so this is what's proposed. Right. So my question is, obviously it's cheaper to have it installed when the town comes through. When are we required to hook up? Is there a time frame?
The policy we've established is if while we're under construction, and before the contracts are closed out, we expect people that are interested to tie in. If the contractor demobilizes and pulls out and completed restoration, I think at that point, we're gonna consider those properties not part of the project.
Hi, Andrea Thomas, Neutral Drive. I have two questions. Number one is pertaining to the placement of the pumps. We called and had a conversation with MID that were very helpful about changing the placement of our pumps. If you take the time to look at the map and then call MRB, you'll find them very helpful in that map. Part of that question is, since I've changed the placement of our pumps, is that reflected on the map now that's in the town hall?
It would depend when you call it, it would depend on when you called. I'm most likely the person who spoke to you.
You did.
The set of plans that are in the town hall are from when the project was let out for bid. So if you called me since, mid-May, it may not be reflected, but in our plans at our office, or my digital plans that are live and constantly updated, they will be updated. It may be a good idea for us to send the town, we can send the town our latest set of plans, so any revisions that have been made will be on there, and we can see them there.
Thank you. My understanding is to the town board itself. One of my biggest frustrations with this project hasn't been everything that's going on, it's been the lack of communication in the town. The only way I found out information is I talked to the town, and I happened to talk to somebody who happened to know something who could answer my question. I propose the town take part of their website and have a sewer district drop-down box. And as all these different events that have to happen to proceed this process forward are listed. This is going to happen on this specific day, for the public hearing and all the things that we talked about that have to happen. Everything is listed, so anybody can go on the website and see where we are at in the process, and not wait for a letter that may or may not get you because your address is incorrect. Thank you.
Hi, Lynn Spitzel, West Potomac Beach. A couple quick questions I don't remember from a couple years ago. All these fees and everything, do they just get added onto our taxes every year? Is that how that's gonna go? Okay. And then what about, like, what do we have to pay up front though? There's gotta be something we have to pay up front, right? Oh, no.
Usually the only upfront fee, I mean, you're gonna have to pay to make your plumbing change and electric change, that's on you. I believe Monroe County Pure Waters will want to set up a customer fee. Like basically setting up an account fee.
That's a yearly fee also, in addition to?
Yeah, but that again, it's establishing that, but the bulk of your upfront costs are going to be your connection. So that'll, sewer connection, and electric.
Okay, and then you guys just know, then we get our septic filled in, or cleaned and filled in afterwards?
You're going to be required to abandon it, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
March 43 was my question. Is there a mechanism that will allow you to have a second grinder? And if so, what's the cost associated with having an additional grinder unit on your one?
We've had this question regarding folks that have a garage, perhaps.
Yes,
It's perhaps more than a garage, and they have a sleeping quarters or something along those lines. The rule of thumb is you have one property, you get one pump.
Okay, with that said, can I purchase my own grinder and service my own grinder and tie into your sewer line at my expense? one-time job.
I would suggest you could have your own grinder tie into your own lateral that goes to the pump that's maintained by the town. But to connect to the town-owned and operated facilities, I don't think we want that. Because if damage occurs,
Right, but you're on the hook for the one that's coming from the house. Anything on top of that, you're recommending that my own grinder zap it over to the one that you're gonna service.
pump it back to your own lateral.
And that's doable.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why not. Because it won't be maintained by your neighbors. You're taking care of your own drive.
It's probably 60, 70. Yeah, I mean, it's far enough where it doesn't make sense, or that's what I thought. But it is doable, and it would be on me to research the cost. Can you even ballpark something like that, or how much a grinder costs in jail over there? I mean, I can do the research, but
I think we were hearing close to prefabricated grinder pump with the wet well and the alarm panel and all that was on the order of about $5,000. For a little ejector pump that's tied into your own system, that's on you. It's just, we wouldn't want that tied on a public system that all of the district would have to maintain and pay for.
Mark Russell again. Based on some of the comments and questions, I would like to suggest that you maybe make an official statement or policy regarding the time period after installation of the grinder pump that people have to get their house connected. I'd like to suggest it be 1 year, not 1 month or some short. It's going to, some people all want to get it done. It's going to be a Zoom, it's going to be a mess. And some places might be simple and some might be quite complicated with plumbing changes. So I suggest you have at least a suggested time period and it'd be fairly generous, allow people time to get it done.
I think that's fair. I guess I can clarify and state that, we would like folks to identify where they want their pump. So we can install that and have it available. Now, what it takes for the private side to be done, transferring the lateral, getting the electric, and tying it in, I think there is latitude for that. But what we don't want is to have a contractor on site doing all the work, putting in all the pumps, and then someone calling after they've left after 3 months and say, oh, by the way, I want a pump over here. Does that make sense?
Ben Schleck again, 7138 Tucker Lane. I called MRB, I've had great contact with them, they've been very helpful in answering my questions, so I thank them a lot for that. I own a vacant piece of land next to the place where we have a home. I have no problem at all bringing the number up to 381 that we divide this by. Part of the goal here is to keep Lake Ontario clean, and we want to minimize the number of septic systems that are close to the lake. That's, I guess, a simple summary of the project. Second comment, I guess, or feedback from the people here for the board. How many people are generally in favor of this? Generally opposed? So hopefully the board can use that information usefully.
Bruce Carl, 600. Question for you on the pump. As we all know, we live on the lake. Power goes out. Okay? Right now I have a septic system. I can go over budget. Okay, I stay in business. I have a grinder pump now. I'm out of business. How much voltage does it take that I can let my electrician hook up where I can hook up a temporary generator to run that pump? And can I do that?
So we included in the contract an add-on to have a generator receptacle on every alarm panel. So we opted to include that in the project cost. So every alarm panel will have a generator reception. It requires, the pump is a 2 horsepower pump, and it runs on 220 volts. So that's what you would need to run a generator. There is a certain amount of storage in the wet well, so you're not out of business if the power goes out. And the third thing to consider is when the power goes out, most people aren't jumping in the shower or in the dishwasher or in the washing machine. So there, yes, it's an inconvenience, but when the power's out, a lot of things.
I got it down there, I just asked the question,
How many people here live on the Lakeshore from the 17th? And when it flooded, you were all going with tops. You see the back? Am I lying? If you had a sewer, you made about, we had sandbags, the front yard for the septic system. It's never been right since. If the water level is high, these people that run that dam, you know, we're not going to flood it again. Thank you.
That's the Hamlin Drive. I just have a question on the debt service. We've already been charged for the first year on less taxes for $75 or whatever it was. Did we already get the 30-year debt? Is that for 25%? And should we be adding on a smaller debt for the higher interest rate?
Then it's a finance question. I'm not sure exactly, well, we have taken out a loan. And we've gotten money to pay our engineers and everything. That's why we started, work has started and the town has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars already in engineering costs and other costs. So that's what the debt service is right now because we have been paying out costs already. So that's what the debt service is. I am not sure if this counts as 30 years or whether it counts as 20. That's a question we're going to have to find out for you for the next one.
What would that service be, a fixed rate? If I can fluctuate over the next 30 years?
It will fluctuate a little bit. I mean, as far as, not much, as far as people adding on or whatever, combined.
Once the 30-year bond is purchased and in place, the only fluctuations on how they structure, they won't see the interest and the capital. So it should be fairly flat. And again, if there are mergers, if there are subdivisions, that's going to be divided out by a varying number, but that is basically a set number that has to be paid off.
And you don't give anybody a job for paying up front and not going through that first?
No, but my suggestion is unless you feel you're going to live for 30 years more, let someone else pay for it down there.
It's a long time,
I also have a letter to read that we were giving our town clerk gave it to me. She got it sent to her today. It is from Jason Baxter, who used to be a town board member until January 1st of this year. I am very confused by which excuse provided by the town board and some other town hall employees to believe. Some board members say it was waiting for the DEC permit, others say it was 19 easements, and some say both. What I'm not confused about is all these excuses saying one thing, the town board failed to do its job. That failure is not of the residents' fault because when I sat in one of those seats not all that long ago, I asked about the sewer project and I was told it was not correct. Well, since we're here tonight, I say that wasn't quite right. It's my point since the town board failed us and caused the delay ways, which have now put the project cost higher, it is their responsibility to fix it. It shouldn't come from the walls that goes into the district, especially since the town has received ARPA money totaling over $900,000. The town needs to use some of this money to cover the increased costs and move the project forward without any further delay. If the town chooses not to do this, I can foresee this project being delayed for several reasons, such as possible extendment of easements, lawsuits, and or residents not on the date, and increased cost of the project. We lost sewers back in '73 for various reasons, but the shoreline residents moved sewers in 2023, and will responsibility will rest squarely on the current town board. Like I said, Mr. Baxter was a town board member until January of this year, so he had a lot of say in what was happening. We have been moving forward, and Mark Leffer was saying he has seen more movement since January. We have been trying to push this through a lot faster. I told you before that in January, when I took office, the DC still was, we did not have permits in January to cross underneath Sandy Creek, there, just this way of Route 19, just east of Route 19. So we could not start the project then, because they didn't give us the permit, the project was done. We didn't wait for easement. I and the attorney were out knocking on houses, trying to get easement. We were down, we are still down, we still have one easement that hasn't been signed. It's at the end of the line, if they don't want to hook up or whatever, and stuff, oh well, but we're not gonna stop the rest of the sewer line. It's at the end of the line and it will not stop. So we can move forward, so try to move forward without the easement. I am not blaming the town board. Like I said, COVID hit, the state, it's not, we have been dealing with right now with the state retirement board, none of our members retired. They talked to the highway department member, and his wife has been trying to get his retirement. You sit for hours on hold, and then the retirement system tells you, their state retirement tells you that they are not in the office. The phone calls are going to the office, then to their home, and whatever they're doing at home, when they see them give a message, they'll answer it and they'll give you a call back. So the state is not back, a lot of the state is not even back to work yet. I blame this COVID started August 2nd. I do blame COVID. The state went home a lot. I am not blaming the town board for this. I don't think people should be blaming the town board for this, personally. I was a highway superintendent for years. You know me because I was down there in Sandbags. I was also a sewer superintendent. I have known a lot, except for some details that I wasn't privy to. I knew a lot of those things in the sewer, but I was a sewer superintendent. Things happen, people. They did, I mean, look at what happened in this country because of COVID and everything, and supply chains not working, and people not going to work, and all the things done in this country. It's the same thing with the sewer project. That's what I'm weighing. As far as 900,000, I believe the town is doing a very, of that 900,000, we are going to take 100,000 out of it and put it towards the sewer project. I think there's a very generous offer, no other town is doing that. So, that's all I got to say, I guess. Is there any more comments? Then I'm going to move, it is 7:33 that we close this public hearing. Thank you to everybody for showing up. And we will take into account, we've got things going to the My point is, I'm a contractor, I get a job working on business. Change it.